Well, good afternoon, guys. On this September 25th, it is very clearly fall by now, at least in the mountains of here. In the valley, it's still maybe technically late summer, but for all intents and purposes, it's fall, and the plants are going dormant, leaves are changing. So let's just hopefully find some plants today. It's kind of the wrong season to find a lot of things in bloom and a lot of easily identifiable plants, but we can still enjoy this hike, I guess. So let's just see what we find. This might be a bit shorter of a hike than I was anticipating, or at least might have to go up Lamb's Canyon instead. Let's just see. Now obviously this forest right here is dominated by white fir, Abies concolor, and Douglas fir, Psuedotsuga menziesii. Looking around, it seems like it's mostly white fir, but there's definitely some Douglas fir as well, a notable amount. And that's very typical of the lower montane zone that we have right here. Oh, this shouldn't be so bad. I guess that's the bridge that was supposed to be out. Well, we just had to boost the ISO up to 3200. So yeah, it's just been taken down. I guess they're going to replace it at some point, but thankfully the river's not rushing because it is, of course, autumn. All the snow's melted and rain hasn't started up again, so probably the lowest time, or the lowest of flow will be for the rivers around here in the Wasatch, aside from maybe midwinter. Yeah, that's most of the trees we got around here. A couple other species. This seems to be some nauseous invasive rose, what many people colloquially would call a dog rose around here, even though that's really just one specific species, but it is pretty commonly a weedy invasive. I'm going to guess this is a member of the genus Solidago, commonly called the Goldenrods, which are found in the family Asteraceae. I mean, if you're a little bit familiar with Asteraceae, at least in the western United States, that should be a little bit obvious, but it might be a little bit more clear if you look at this less post-bloom specimen right here. You can see its capitula just a little bit better. But yeah, I think it's just a little bit too late in the season to actually properly identify exactly what species it is. Well, I mean, if you knew what was around here, you'd probably be able to tell what it is. About a good maybe 10 to 15 species of Solidago in Utah. That's just a guess, I'm not sure, but that's what I presume. I think it's a fairly specious genus in the western United States. Well, here's a familiar one. We got Apocynum androsaemifolium, commonly known as, well, not sure exactly what the species is, but it's the a type of Dogbane. That's what the genus Apocynum is. It's a member of the family Apocynacea, of course, and like most of them, it is toxic. And if I pull a leaf off, we're going to find a little dot of toxic latex. Very cool plant, I think. It seems to really like disturbed sunny areas like right around here, so you often find it growing on the sides of trails where it's, you know, a very degraded habitat, of course. And here I guess, so maybe that's a sign this habitat is a bit degraded, unfortunately, but maybe not either. Let's just keep hiking. Now here's one I think you guys will appreciate a bit. These plants with the trifoliate leaves are a species of Fragaria, commonly known as strawberries, and this one in particular I think is Fragaria vesca, as opposed to Fragaria virginiana, which is the other common species you'll find native here. There's a few ways you can tell them apart, but one of them is by the terminal tooth. This one, it seems like it's well developed and it sticks a little bit beyond the lateral tooth, like the terminal tooth right there, where my thumb is. That's just a little hard to tell. So this one might be, it could possibly be virginiana, but on some of these other leaves, it's a lot easier to tell what I'm talking about. But either way, it's a sort of a rhizomatous plant that looks kind of a lot like a potentilla, almost, except it's definitely not. Can't really explain it better than that. We can see a little bit of the one flower left. If they produce any fruit, I'm sure they've been picked clean. It's a common foraging favorite around here. Here are some younger shoots as well. Very neat plant. Oh, just quite a lot up here actually. Can't believe I haven't talked about Fragaria before. I saw some at the Uintas, but I surprisingly and stupidly forgot to actually make a clip about them. And those ones I believe were Fragaria virginiana. Yeah, I'm about 7,500 feet up right now, and I just don't know what anything is. I guess I can guess a few things. That is something asteraceous. Tell just by its head. It has opposite leaves. So I'm able to figure it out from there. There's not a ton of species that really could be. You can combine elevation and other features like this together, but I just couldn't tell specifically. It's likely a species I know, but I just can't know for sure. This seems to be Agastache urticifolia. Again, it has opposite leaves. It's still a bit green. That's just basically what it looks like. It's a member of the mint family, of course. I talk about it so much, but it's a little hard to tell what it is when it's dormant like this. And of course we got some of the Wyethia amplexicaulis over here. It's big mule's ear-like leaves growing on the stem as such. Pointed this out before, but Wyethia amplexicaulis, when it's dormant like this, has brown leaves typically, while Balsama sagittata has more grayish looking leaves. It's an interesting feature for sure. Got some dog shit and not much else. It's interesting that we're this high up and we're now getting into a zone of Quercus, gambelii, the Gambel Oak, of course. It's a little bit high up for it, and they're especially to be growing this strong as such, but it seems to be a very sun-exposed area. And I think honestly we might be seeing a bit more of that as I actually get onto Mount Aire itself. Okay, this is sort of what I was talking about. We have Mount Aire right in front of us, which despite getting up to 8,600 feet, appears to be almost entirely covered not by forest species appropriate for its elevation, or even forest species we'd find lower down, but mountain brush species. This is especially interesting because its lower slopes are very clearly covered with typical forest species of the lower montane, but the upper montane here, it seems to be a high altitude outpost of mountain brush habitat with a lot of Quercus ledifolius and Gambel Oak. A bit of aspen forest on the side there, but especially at the top, it seems to be quite heavily dominated by lower altitude, drier species. Almost assuredly this is because of how exposed it is, but it's still a very interesting thing to observe, and it'll be really cool walking through it to see what kind of plants we'll find. In fact, we might find some things that are still in bloom, hopefully. Now, the typical trees of the mountain brush zone are Quercus gambelii, the Gambel Oak, which you have dominating right here, Quercus ledifolius, curly-leaf mountain mahogany. In some wetter parts you start to get Acer grandidentatum, the big tooth maple. Hopefully we see a few of those. Actually, it's almost positive that tree turning color ahead of us is. And Prunus virginiana, which you also have right here. The choke cherry, a common species throughout North America. And you also get a few other shrubs though. For instance, this is a species of, I think Symphoracarpos, known as the snowberries, very closely related to Lonicera, the honeysuckles. Both are of course in the family Caprifoliaceae. I don't want to say of course so much. This stuff shouldn't be necessarily obvious to all of you guys. And it's not even very obvious to me, but it's just a sort of a bridging phrase to help fill some space in videos, I guess. I don't know. But you can see its namesake snow-colored berries right there. I'm not sure if that's actually why they're called snowberries. A lot of them tend to have white berries, but it might just be because they persist throughout the winter season. I have to look that one up, but they do have opposite leaves. And there's going to be a few ones. It could likely be some Symphoracarpos aureophilus, or maybe a few others. You find them also a lot in the pinyon juniper forest as well, which is a little interesting because that's sort of almost a transition through the mountain brush zone in a few ways. I'll set up a head. I want to see if that's actually what this plant is. The tree, I mean. Yeah, that's got to be Acer grandidentatum. I knew what it was, but I just never know entirely for sure. Wow. I wish this camera could make colors show up as vividly as they actually are to the human eye, because this is really incredible. I hope this turns out at least a fraction of nice as it looks. I mean, it's an autumn tree. It's not that special, but I think I'm just really easily amused and can appreciate the little things like this. So before, it tends to be more common in wetter areas, like wetter aspects of the mountain brush going to like its own sort of forest community, like you'll find elsewhere in Millcreek Canyon especially. We have a couple of white firs and maybe Douglas firs here, like this one. Yeah, looking at the needles, it does seem to be a white fir because it doesn't have the crook in them. I mean, I made a great video on how to tell apart Douglas fir and white fir. It's actually my most popular video. This is definitely a white fir here. Right, let's head on. All right, this is some certified mountain brush over here. See, it's a lot more open and low down, and there's even patches of grass dominating. Soon after I made that last clip, I started running into Artemisia tridentata, the big sagebrush, although those ones are looking rather small, I should say. Maybe they're a different species, I don't know. Same thing as that, I'm pretty sure. And you see the Gambel Oak are growing really low here, so maybe a fire passed through, or maybe they just can't get very big. We've got some interesting species here. Well, not that many, I should be honest. There's like maybe 20 species I can see easily in frame, but we do have this. Mature Cercium neomexicana. Most common species of thistle you'll find in the foothills and mountain brush zone and pinyon juniper around this part of the state. A lot of invasive thistles, and thankfully this is not one of them. It's a nice native. Oh, and this is, I was mentioning earlier, how Balsamorhiza sagittata has gray leaves. This is what I meant. You can see this specimen, which is mature, or I should say senesced for the season. Very clearly has gray leaves, as opposed to the more brown looking ones of the, and almost like whitish looking. It's not quite showing up on camera the way I'd like it to, but believe me, they are definitely quite gray to white looking compared to the brown of the Wyethia amplexicaulis. Amazing. I keep seeing this darn plant along the side of a trail, and I got no idea what exactly it is. But I want to guess, this is so far I feel like, but I want to guess that it's Commandra umbellatum, commonly called bastard toadflax. It's a member of a monotypic genus in the family Santalaceae, but I can't really talk about it if I don't know for sure. I don't want to, it's kind of embarrassing to make a big speech about a plant when you ID it wrong, but I have a feeling that's what it is. I don't know for sure. I haven't been able to find any flowers, but see it right here, and over here, it could just be some boring asteraceous kind of thing, maybe like a heterotheca, but I really think it might be Commandra umbellatum. If it is a member of a Santalaceae, it is of course parasitic and likely parasitizing other plants around here, but again, I just can't know for sure. There's a close-up of some of its more green-looking leaves. I don't think aside from the mistletoes there's any members of Santalaceae that occur this far north aside from Commandra umbellatum, so that's definitely notable about it. The northern outpost of a more, I believe, tropical group of plants. Okay, getting a little bit higher up and more towards the peak where it's more exposed. We're now getting a forest dominated by Cercocarpus ledifolius. Once again, the curl-leaf mountain mahogany. Of the mountain brush species I listed earlier, this one definitely seems to thrive the best on rockier, craggier, more exposed areas. So it's no surprise we can see it right here in greater abundance as we're getting to the top. That sort of applies to the whole genus Cercocarpus, like Cercocarpus montana, which I see much more commonly in southern Utah, seems to do well on ridgelines and exposed areas and are quite stony in soil. Look at this, look at all the rock you can find on the ground right here. Makes sense as we're getting towards the summit. We have these small differences in topography and microclimate and adaptive conditions which have a big effect on what species you'll find. Not just at all, but which ones dominate and what abundance and how well they do. It's really fascinating ecology if you really take the time to learn it. Man, it's really hard to talk and hike at the same time without constantly going like I'm trying to work on it, as my friend pointed out I should. I could also just dub everything after the fact, but I think the background noises are good as well, and to improve the video, and it would just take days to make any video if I overdubbed every single thing I did. It's a lot harder than people realize. And there's only one person who's actually brought it up to me, but I just want to make that point to anyone out here who wonders why I don't do that with my videos typically. I do it sometimes though, because some clips are just terrible, and I was trying to make a high effort video, so I just have to do it, but it's just not normally the best idea. Oh, we got a nice Abies concolor as well. I might see a little bit more of that in a second. And here we are at the summit of Mount Aire, elevation 8,621 feet or 2,628 meters. We've got quite a good views a ways away because it's the highest peak on this sort of ridge line in the Wasatch between Millcreek and Parley's Canyon. There's a tendency for the mountains to get shorter as you move from south to north in the central Wasatch, at least. It's not even just a tendency, it's just a fact of them. because like, you know, Lone Peak and Twin Peaks in the more southern Wasatch or southern central Wasatch are fairly tall, while here they don't really get above 9,000 feet. Those are very clearly above 10,000, and if we go for hiking up the ones, I mean, you can't even see them above the trees here, we're so low down, but across some Parleys and Emigration Canyons of ridge lines over that way, not even above 8,000 feet though. I thought to get higher again, like that peak out there I believe is almost 10,000, I don't know for sure though. But you're right, you can see all the Quercus ledifolius and some more conifer trees growing on the north side. Here, these are definitely Douglas firs actually, because you can tell by the cones hanging down from the trees. Of course, Psuedotsuga menziesii. There's a couple of other plants you can find up here. Saw this along the trail elsewhere, that's a species of Eriogonum I'm going to have to figure out later, because I haven't studied them as much as I should be. It's a bit of a shrubby species, so that's important for identifying them. Well, some of our wildflowers, got some of the Heliomorus multiflora growing down that way. It's a yellow flower. It's got opposite leaves and a very thin stem. I've talked about in my last video, which seemed to do pretty well, about upper montane or lower subalpine wildflowers. I can't remember what I called it, but that's what I was talking about. It took me long enough to focus on them. I got a couple other things up here. I'm just gonna button my pants really quick. It's a species of, it's gotta be Sambucus racemosa, the red elderberry over here. Oh, hey. Is that a, it's got to be a sago lily, the Calochortus nutalii. Or is it Nutalianum? I don't even remember at this point. And even though the scientific name is honestly not that important sometimes. I mean, it's good to get it right, but getting the exact thing correct. I mean, you should know, but don't blame yourself if you mix up a Nutalii with a Nutalianum or a Sandwichensis with a Sandwichensiana or something like that. That's what I'm talking about. I'm in the family Adoxaceae with opposite pinnately compound leaves. The two species of Sambucus you find here are Sambucus cerulea and Sambucus racemosa, with cerulea occurring at lower elevations and having more like cymose flowers, while the racemosa grows higher up with, of course, a raceme inflorescence. Sorry, cymose inflorescence, whatever. People mix this up all the time. I'm not the only one. It's got some Prunus virginiana losing its leaves, most likely not because it's already autumn, but because, I mean, that's part of the fact, but because it's been quite dry up here and a lot of trees are not doing so well. And it's also the fact that it's autumn, but there's really not been a lot of rain this past August and September. But we did have a fairly heavy storm not too long ago. Either way, this has got to be the end of my video. Hope it's not too bad. I mean, I feel like I was a little bit rusty here, but yeah, I'm getting closer to 100 subscribers. And maybe by the time I upload this, it actually will be 100 subscribers. I'm going to try and be more proactive though. I got a bunch of Hawaii videos to work through still. So thanks for watching, and see you guys all next time. Something noteworthy on the mountainside over that way. You see on slopes that are facing one direction, there tend to be trees, while on the other, there tend to be shrubs or maybe just very short trees. Now the ones of trees are east facing and the ones of shrubs are west facing. I think just as an example of the effect of east to west aspect on what kind of vegetation grows, because I said before in a previous video that east facing slopes tend to get more sunlight, and during the hottest part of the day they don't get sunlight, while in the morning when it's cooler they get sunlight, so it moderates the temperature, while the west facing slopes get their sunlight at the hottest portion of the day. I'm giving a double whammy of heat, so plants that live on the slope have to be more heat adapted. Now, it's not as strong an effect as the north-south aspect difference, but it does have an effect on which vegetation grows.